Dean of our delegation for hosting these special orders so we can remember our most remarkable senator. As I was thinking about how best to talk about him, and we've heard some wonderful remembrances this evening, I was looking back to the early 60s when I was, like so many of us, a student in high school, a beginning student in high school. I hate to give away our age, but the inspirational figures of the Kennedy family, in particular President John F. Kennedy. And my husband Paul used to say that he was inspired by that presidency to seek public office, but he had grown up in what he called a disadvantaged household. His parents were Republicans, and it was the presidency of John Kennedy who inspired him and so many either to become a Democrat or to seek out public office. Little knowing that some years later we would be serving with the man we remember tonight. My first recollection, though, of Senator Kennedy is in 1974 when Paul was a candidate for the seat that I now hold, and Senator Kennedy agreed to come to Lawrence, Massachusetts to campaign for Paul, who was part of the great Watergate class in which there were many, many Democrats running across this country, and Paul was running against an incumbent Republican. Senator Kennedy came to Lawrence, Massachusetts to St. Mary's Church. He was accompanied by Barbara Soliotis, who these many, many years later still serves as his state director. At the time, I think she was an advanced person who I remember her utter professionalism in keeping Ted on track. We've heard tonight what a great speaker he was, how he could really connect with the crowd, and so he did that evening. And while Ted was speaking, Paul looked at me like, now what on earth do I do? Because he knew he could never compare with Ted Kennedy, and he didn't even try. But you could see then how fundamentally Ted connected with people because they trusted him, and they knew that he was working in their behalf. I remember again Ted in '78 when he supported Paul against an incumbent United States senator, somebody who was his colleague, a Republican, as he did so often, kept his word, supported his colleagues, whether they were seeking the presidency, as they in turn supported him. Well, I haven't had the opportunity to serve, unfortunately, with Ted as long as others here. I do have a couple of remembrances from the past several years. And one was when he did agree to come and campaign for me, again in Haverhill and Lawrence, Massachusetts, the cities of the 5th District of Massachusetts. This time, though, he came with a van. He brought Sonny and Splash, the dogs. Barbara Soliotis, who was with him in 1974, was there at his side yet again, along with Vicki. And we started out in Haverhill. We went to an old diner that was owned by a Greek-American family. Barbara's mother brought pastries that she cooked. Ted sat there with a little demi-tasse glass of coffee, ate the pastries, and thoroughly enjoyed the morning. Then we traveled on to a small school where we were going to read. It was an early reading program, very, very good one that's really, I think, a real model going forward. And Ted, this remarkable senator who has met with every imaginable world leader, sat and sang Eensy Beensy Spider to the 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds that were in the room with him. He had a remarkable ability to connect with all of humanity. My last conversation with him was around a piece of legislation that we both jointly sponsored. It was to protect a farm called Barrett's Farm. We've learned and know what a lover of history he is, but I represent 2 national parks, the Minuteman National Park and the Lowell National Historical Park. And Barrett's Farm is a farm that played a very important role in the beginnings of the American Revolution. It was a farm that housed the munitions that the Minutemen were going to use, and the British, learning of the munitions, decided to march on Lexington and Concord, prompting Paul Revere's ride to warn that the British were coming. The Minutemen got to Barrett's Farm, hid the munitions, and so by the time the British arrived, the munitions were safely set aside where they could be used as we advanced our Revolutionary War effort. But the shot heard around the world that changed the history of this country. So we worked hard. My former Congressman Marty Meehan had initially filed the legislation. I followed up on that, working with Senator Kennedy. The bill finally was signed into law. And this April, I was sitting in my office, and I get a call at Senator Kennedy on the line, and I picked it up, and he goes, "Niki, isn't it grand? He could celebrate that small legislative act that protected such important history with the same joy and commitment that he did the grandest of efforts." Senator Kennedy's legislation has shaped American lives in ways we cannot even know. Every day, our lives are different for all that he did, and we are so fortunate to have had his service, to have the great legacy of the Kennedy family, and to be serving today with Representative Patrick Kennedy, who continues that legacy as well. We will miss him. We will miss him forever, but we will always remember him in the large acts and small kindnesses of his life.
Thank you, John, so much for those words. Now, and a number of members have